Speaking of rolling back into the midfield, let's head over to the West for the Thursday night clash between Collingwood and Fremantle. And the big storyline out of that was Jack Crisp. Had his number one game of his illustrious career thanks to champion data, 29 disposals, 2 goals, but his role was entirely different.
It was. He spent a lot more time in the midfield. He's been playing sort of that wing role for most of this season, and obviously the players that were rested opened up that space through the midfield. So yeah, I think this is creating a very healthy conversation at Collingwood around his preferred role or his best role and how he can best contribute to the team. So if we have a look at some of his numbers, so from opening round to round 8, 90% of his game time was spent on the wing. Round 9, he sort of spent 22% on that wing and 78% inside mid. So that's a huge change in that role. Obviously, the spots were up for grabs with side bottom resting and staying at home. But that position there, I think he is a brilliant sort of 1-2 punch, or if things aren't going right, we saw Nick Dacos have to spend time forward because he was tagged out of the game very effectively, but went forward and kicked a couple of goals. But it creates this selection squeeze, which is absolutely not a bad problem to have at the Magpies. So their starting midfield now is basically can be selected from a range of these players, and I still think the 3 at the top are the 3 that have the first crack at it. But it just means during a game, if someone's being tagged out or a player is sort of hot and up and running, inject them through the centre bounce, get them up and running. And we've seen Jack Crisp just be able to take the game away from Fremantle really through centre bounce.
So you say that 3 at the top. You don't have Jordan De Goey in Collingwood starting midfield when he's available for selection, which is presumably next week.
I don't think from what we've seen this season, I don't think he can play huge midfield minutes at the moment. I think he's spending a large amount of time in the forward line, and they said they rested him to get a huge block of running into him over the next couple of weeks. So maybe that lifts his tank a little bit so he can run through there and spend a bit more time through the midfield. But I think at the moment it's the top 3 that are probably taking the first centre bounce of most games if the game's on the line.
Tom Mitchell's the other one that's not on there, who returned via the VFL today. He had 10 disposals in the first half there, 6 clearances, but just great to see him get through unscathed. You say the top 3 are the 3. Nick Dacos at the top of that list. We can't be too certain about his fitness is all I'm going to say. He had a few hip issues through that game and was tagged out of it largely by Corey Warner. But in the aftermath of the game, he's also pulled up with a pectoral injury, which you can see just a little bit sensitive as a couple of the boys are touching his shoulder there. I think it's Tim Membry, and you can just see the wince there. Great pictures, courtesy of Channel 7 there. I mean, if they lose him, that's a massive blow. My understanding is it's not too serious. He'll undergo scans, and Collingwood will have more on that in the coming days. He's not the only one. Darcy Moore, a bit of a shoulder issue, and Jamie Elliott with an ab issue, which I think is similar to what Brody Myercheck had and missed the one game. So some injury sort of concerns that are on the horizon for the Pies there. Let's have a look at the Dockers. There was one change that you liked a little bit later in the game that you saw, and it surrounds their boom recruit, Shai Bolton.
Yeah, Shai Bolton. I just think his numbers through the centre bounce and his ability to play in that centre bounce role. We see Melbourne do it so well with Cozzy Pickett. Starts in the centre bounce and then will run forward or spit back as well to help defend. So the game against the Saints, where we all know they scored 7 points till half time, he sat in the goal square. He took 6 centre bounce for the game. That's the entirety of the match. Against Collingwood on Thursday night, he had 16 centre bounce attendees, and his numbers were much improved for the game. Saw him a few weeks ago when they were playing Melbourne at the MCG, and he played a dynamic role again, attending centre bounce clearances, spitting forward. He single-handedly nearly took that game away from them. The only player better on the ground was Cozzy Pickett, who's playing a similar role. So I love that. They need to keep him there. They recruited him to the club to make an impact on games. For me, sitting him deep in the goal square for 3 quarters when you can't score a goal, that's not his best role. I liked the way they used him on Thursday night.
Do you think, playing him in that deep forward role, he's probably not worth the 2 first-rounders they paid for him? And do you think that if they play him in that midfield role, that he could fulfil that potential?
Yeah, well, I just don't think that's his best position on ground. I think sitting him out of the goal square with the way that they're moving the ball at the moment is not going to favour a player like Shai Bolton, who can get the ball out the back, can take his opponent up to the contest and beat them back towards goal. So absolutely, centre bounce or clearance is the way to play him. He's not 100% midfielder, obviously, with his tank, but use him through there sparingly and you'll get the best out of him.
A quick word, Freo's season in a nutshell. Is it over? Are they still in the fight? And where do you see Justin Longmuir in all this?
Oh, I think it's getting pretty tough now for Fremantle. I think their home and away record just speaks for itself, really. Going down at home, yes, a spirited performance from Collingwood. You can't take anything away from them, but just the drastic changes week in, week out that we're seeing from their best and their worst at the moment is just not good enough, and frankly, they need to close that gap. They were much better on Thursday night, but still not consistent enough for me.